Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Jim. Thank you as always for joining me. And today we're going to be taking a look at a pretty radical knife that I have not seen a lot of people talking about, unfortunately. This is the Beans Blades Mini Warrior Folder. And this is designed by Derek Beans, who is a custom knife maker that seems to specialize mostly in fixed blade knives. I know a thing or two about that. And he has taken his designs and transformed them into folder designs and allowed one of the most prestigious of the Far East country manufacturers to produce it, and that's Riot Knives. Now, keep in mind that what you're getting for $445 is really only a couple of dollars more than what you would spend on any typical Riot build to begin with. And what you're getting in the end is something wildly unique, something that I have not seen come from anybody else. And well, I kind of dig that. I like how it feels. I like the feeling of the action. I like the lockup. I like the flipper tab. There is a lot to love about this knife, and I'm going to break all that down for you as we run through this review. First, we'll start off with some photography as always, and if I have the time, I'll whip up some interesting music for you during the photo montage, and then we'll get into the review. But first, I would like to thank this video's sponsor, which is bladeandbeam.com. The owners over there, Rachel and Dillard George, who were kind enough to send me a large box full of amazing things, flashlights and knives and all kinds of other goodies. Not only are they sponsors because they sent the stuff out for me to make content out of, but the most important thing is the fact that you will get a discount. So if you use the link down below in the video description and use my discount code, you're going to be able to get a little discount off of anything that you purchase there, not just the item that I'm showing you. So if what you see you end up liking and you decide on your own, hey, I want to get one of these for myself, I'm not going to tell you to buy one. I'm not going to tell you not to buy one either. But if you do choose to buy one, now you can get a nice little discount and you'll get super customer service and great shipping. That's the experience I had from them when I purchased from them and why I asked them to collaborate with me on a few of these awesome products. But without any further ado, let's get the camera flipped around and get up close and personal with this killer little Americanized Tanto.
I got this feeling deep inside, a yearning that I can't hide, for a knife that's strong yet small, that carries easily in my pocket. And after all, I want a blade that'll be super tough, that can punch through anything rough. But the knives I find are out of reach, too expensive for a man like me. And I stumbled upon the Mini Warrior, by Beans Blades, a true gem for sure. A Tanto with a severe angle, mean and lean. Now my blues are over, I found my dream. Thank you, Blade and Beam.
All right, let's get up close and personal with the Mini Warrior from Beans Blades. Now, I got to be honest with you, when I first had the opportunity to work with Blade and Beam, the first knife that came to my head that they have listed on their website that I wanted to play with, that I wanted to get a familiarization with, was this knife right here. Because I have nearly pulled the trigger on it a couple of times, but you know, this is a brand I was completely unfamiliar with from a maker that I had at the time never heard of. So it was a bit of a challenge for me to just go, I'm going to go ahead and lay out, what is it, $445 on this thing and not be 100% sure if I'm going to like it. Plus the fact that it said it was a 3-inch blade, I went, oh man, that sounds really, really tiny. Now, typically, a 3-inch bladed knife is going to be rather tiny, but this one is not. Overall length is 7¼ inches, and it fits perfectly, perfectly into my large hands. And the blade just seems bigger than what it's listed at. On top of that, as you can see, I'm kind of addicted to flipping it. On top of that, the action is incredible. This is one of Riot's absolute finest detents that I've ever felt, and it is exactly as smooth as you would expect it to be. And of course, it's on ceramic bearings, ceramic detent. They did an absolute knockout job on it. I'm a big fan of Tanto designs, as you guys know. And yes, it is Tanto, not Tanto. This is not the Lone Ranger's lifelong friend. It is Tanto. Anyway, I digress. The overall design is fantastic. It kind of has this tank-like tough look to it all the way around. And the fact that it has, and a lot of people are going to be turned off by the fact that it's such a sharp angle for that Tanto tip. This is a severely Americanized Tanto. It's done that way because now there's very little tip to be ground, and that means there's a lot of steel behind that tip that's reinforcing it to keep it from becoming misshapen, bent, or broken if you're actually to use a Tanto for what it's designed for, which is straight-on piercing. So, all around excellent design. I am glad that they changed one thing from the fixed blade into the folder. The fixed blades are more or less a Scandi grind, where that grind only goes up about this high, and it's on a fairly thick chunk of steel. So, I mean, maybe those are good for splitting wood, but for EDC cutting and finer slicing and things like that, I can't imagine that that's the knife that I would reach for. And that's coming from somebody that has owned a lot of Pohan Lu knives. And I love Scandi grinds. I love what can be done. And you can make them super crazy sharp. But when the bevel height is very, very short on a thick blade stock, then what happens is, instead of having a very, very fine geometry, it's like this. So if you're pushing through or cutting through something that's very thick, say you're cutting down cardboard boxes, this is going to be more of a challenge to push through than something that has a higher bevel with a thinner grind. Now this one I don't see as being too much of a problem because this is a higher bevel height than what I have seen, again only in pictures, of Derek Bean's fixed blade knives. I do like the Warrior. I do like the look of the Warrior. I think overall, it's a wonderful design, great blade shape, good blade length on this, because again, I thought it was going to be too small, and it's just not. Matter of fact, let me put this up against a 3.5-inch knife that I happen to have sitting right here, because I'm always working with my knives. That's a 3.5-inch blade. Now, my Tanto is obviously, it's still Americanized, but it's not quite as severe of an angle. So he's definitely going to have, it's almost like having two tips. You've got that tip, and then you've got this right here, which is going to be really, really good at cutting open packages and things like that. It's going to be very good for that. So the scaphoid comes out only looking a little bit larger in the blade and only a little bit larger overall when you put them pivot to pivot. But there's something about this blade, again, it's only 3 inches, that just seems larger. And I really, really like that. I also like the black wash that was done here. Let's see if I can give you a nice close-up here. It's a nice fine black wash, something that Riot has mastered for, geez, well over a decade now. They have a really clean, dark acid stone wash that looks so good, so clean, without looking nasty and just yucky. By the way, I had mentioned during the unboxing it had this little snail trail on it. I found out this is Dillard's actual carry knife. He pulled it from his inventory to carry himself. That alone should tell you how great this knife is. When the owner of Blade and Beam says, hey, I like this knife so much, out of all the inventory I have sitting here, I've got to grab one of these and have it for myself. So this is his personal carry knife. He's allowed me to carry it myself. I have done it just around the house, and just to make sure it fits well in the pocket and it's not cumbersome and that it's actually a good EDC choice. And it is. It is excellent. It's got a little bit of weight to it, but it's excellent. As a matter of fact, now that I'm saying that, I think it's probably a good time to bring up the specs. Your blade material is M390. Overall length is 7¼ inches with a 3-inch blade. The blade stock thickness, 160 thou, actually 159 thou. And that doesn't sound crazy until you actually look at it in the size of knife this is. And you'd swear it's thicker than it actually is too. But it's not. It's a really good thickness for this overall feel of the knife. I would have liked to have seen it probably around 140, 145, just for it to be a little bit slicier. But it has that tough, overbuilt feel to it without being ridiculously overbuilt that I like. The finish is the black PVD. Again, it's their black wash. Same thing on the bolsters, or a bolster, I should say. It's a single bolster. And the black wash on the entire frame lock side. Hardware is all titanium. Your pocket clip is titanium. Your back spacer is titanium. Of course, obviously, your 6-shooter pivot is titanium. And it's riding on ceramic ball bearings, and it's fired by a ceramic detent ball. And yes, I really do like the carbon fiber selection here. It looks good. It's got some patterning to it, but it's not crazy, ridiculous, overdone. And sometimes it's easy to get carried away. And I've done the exact same thing, getting into, let's do purple haze on this and copper infused carbon fiber on this and then aluminum carbon fiber and, let's do this color and that color and that color and that color, because there's so much available to us these days. It's nice to see someone that has the restraint to do a toned down, tone on tone, monotone version, all black. It looks really, really good. Now, I think I mentioned before in the intro that I really liked the shape and the jimping of the flipper tab. It gives you a nice positive purchase. It's very easy to flip it. I will say this. The detent is it's tuned in such a way that if you have your fingers resting on the lock bar, you are almost never going to get this thing open. You've got to make sure your fingers are off that lock bar, or it's the slightest of pressure on that lock bar, because it can be a very strong detent. And I'm having a little bit of a hard time demonstrating that all of a sudden. Not really sure why. But yeah, I've noticed a couple times I've gone to pick it up and flip it, and I'm like, why won't it open? Well, because my finger's on the lock bar. And that's something that people need to realize happens on any and all frame lock knives. I've had customers of mine that have come back to me and gone, hey man, I can't flip this knife. I don't know what's going on. It's just too hard to flip. And I have to explain to them, it's because your finger's on the lock bar, man. Get your fingers off the lock bar, and each one is perfectly tuned. It's going to fly out. It's going to be great. It's going to feel good. Then they always email right back and go, yeah, that's what it was. My finger was on the lock bar. And I've heard that for years across every major brand or maker that you can think of. But this one is particularly sensitive to that. So if your finger's on it, it's going to be a finger breaker trying to get that thing open. So overall, I think this is a pretty darn fantastic knife, to the point where I know there are new variations that are going to be coming out soon. And I almost don't care because I want this one. I want the all black. I'm going to find a way to get one of these in my personal collection and have one for myself, because I want to have one to carry. I want to have one to use. And I want to have one to experience on a long-term basis because I like it that much. And these days, it takes a lot. You've got to seriously impress me for me to spend money on a knife, because there's just too many good knives out there at all these varying different price points that there's a tremendous amount of competition for what I want to carry. And since I have the wonderful benefit of being able to experience a lot of knives all the time, I am somewhat jaded. So for me to say I have to have one of these, I'll tell you right now, it's really, really good. And I think you're really going to enjoy it. Anyway, that's it for me on this. I want to thank again the sponsor for this video, Blade & Beam, for setting me up with this to allow me to come out here with some fresh new content on knives and on lights. Actually, I'm getting ready to sit down and do the review on this CWF light in just a couple of minutes. So go over and check them out. The reason why I had invited them myself to my channel to be a sponsor and to work with on these projects is because I have purchased from them and I had a wonderful experience. I like the prices that they put on their items, and I like the fact that they have a drop every Friday, meaning that there is new, fresh, exciting inventory every Friday for you to experience. And that's something that I particularly enjoy. So if you haven't already, go check out bladeandbeam.com and support an American family business. With that, I'm out. I'm out of here. Me and my hiccups. And I'll see you on the next video.